Hello and welcome to Tiny Desk Knitting with Emma. Today, I'm going to be talking about a couple of new Fair Isle accessories that I've done. Again, as I've said before, I don't always do Fair Isle anymore on my channel. I've kind of gotten into just other things. I knit other stuff, so I figured might as well share the love. And you can always skip the ones that aren't about Fair Isle if that floats your boat. I do put in the description generally what's the episode's about. Today I'm wearing Fernet Bronca by Thea Coleman. I think it's Fernet, maybe it's Fernet, F-E-R-N-E-T. It's some kind of alcoholic beverage because she names all of her designs after cocktails, which is really cute. But this is knit in, it's Harrisville Watershed, which is like a worsted weight woolen spun yarn inspired by beautiful things that they found in nature in New Hampshire near the mill. And this color is called Aquifer. And if you look really close, you can see that it's quite heathered with green and red, but it's obviously mostly blue. And again, woolen spun. If you've never tried Harrisville's yarns, this is kind of similar to Highland, which is the more sort of wide range of colors, like regular colors, not inspired by nature. So Highland is similar to Watershed just in terms of content and the way that they spin it, but it comes in bigger skeins, and they also have weaving cones. But this mill, Harrisville in New Hampshire, they also spin Brooklyn tweed yarn, and so they spin Shelter and Loft. And this is definitely in the realm of Brooklyn tweed Shelter in terms of the yarn feel. It's a little bit less soft. I think that has to do with the fiber content. I'm not a spinner again, but I can tell you that there will be a difference in how something feels based on what breed is used. And Brooklyn tweed is pretty breed specific. I think those are Targhee sheep in Shelter. I think that's Targhee wool. So anyway, this is not Fair Isle, but I will be talking about Fair Isle today. This is a cable, this is my favorite kind of cable type of sweater. It's there's a really simple cable work. It's the same on the back, except there's like a stockinette stripe that goes down, so you can tell which one's the front and which one's the back. And then it's just textured, and the sleeves are plain. I actually knit this in pieces and sewed it together, which I hate doing, but it was fine. I knit it at the beginning of COVID. I'll link the Harrisville shop down below. So today I've got a couple of new things that I've recently finished. I've got these half star mitts, which you will have seen if you watched my whip roundup from a few weeks ago. Both of these pieces actually were in my whip roundup, and I finished them. My whip roundup is going great. I'm kind of almost done because I've frogged a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm as done as I kind of want to be, basically, although there's still one more week. So these are by Birgerberg, or however that name is pronounced. I should ask somebody because I don't speak Norwegian, but this is an amazing book. I will link the book below. It's really cool. I mean, I'll link where you can buy it. You can get it at the Woolly Thistle. Usually you can get the things that I show at the Woolly Thistle because they have everything that you could ever want. And it is amazing. The tagline on the back is traditional Norwegian patterning meets modern knitting design, which is exactly kind of how I feel about these patterns. And there's a lot of really good patterns in here. So these are like, the kind of featured photo that was like everywhere when this came out. And this is what everybody has kind of wanted to be knitting. I've seen a lot of podcasters and YouTubers talking about it. I think Tracy from the Grocery Girls made this pair, or at least like one of the pair. So this comes in, there's a men's version and a women's version, and the difference is that there are more stitches in the men's mitten, and the way that is, and there's more. I think that it's taller. Maybe it's not. Maybe this star's a little bigger. It probably is. Yeah, okay, it goes a little deeper, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it goes a little deeper. It's a little taller. There's like one more stitch in these. Like these are a little bit, it's just done on a slightly larger scale. So the difference is just in how wide they are, and he does that by, on the men's mittens, he widens the stolpa here, which is the strip. It's a little pilly, but you can see there. I learned all about Norwegian mittens because I took Patricia Fortune's online Selbu mittens class, which I'll also link. Patricia has these really cool online classes. She lives in Selbu and she does these classes on mittens. There's an advanced and a beginner. I took the advanced one and it was phenomenal. There's like a Selbu socks class. She does weaving classes. She does courses on how to knit traditional kofta, or koftan, I think is the plural, which is like a big type of sweater or like jacket. They're super cool. And she's really a good teacher, and it's nice to get to do it from your bed. So I learned a whole bunch of cool things from Patricia Fortune, and I like really just came to appreciate all this stuff about the Selbu mittens, like the rules for, it was a cottage industry, and so there were all these standards, which are really cool. And for instance, this is a correct pattern because this, I mean, in the center of this, the big pattern, which is that point of the star, lines up with the center of the cuff. I don't even know if that's really the middle, but the middle of the pattern does line up with the middle of that star on the cuff. These are non-traditional in many ways. Like these, I like that these aren't finished. Like these are half stars on there too. And the thumb's really funky. It's a traditional thumb gusset. I'll put this on so you can see. So you're not doing it out the side. You are essentially doing what we call a peasant thumb, except that there's also a gusset. So you basically cast off stitches, or you put them on waste yarn and you cast on stitches above the hole. I cannot do that without making a huge mess of this. So I actually use waste yarn. I do like a forethought heel. So I put the waste yarn in, I slip the stitches all the way back, and then I keep knitting with over those slipped stitches for the thumb, a hole with the yarn, so I don't have to cut the yarn or like wrap it a bunch of times around the waste yarn or anything, which I used to do. That's kind of a complicated way to explain it. I put waste yarn in for the thumbs because for me, that's a lot easier to pick up the stitches to go than knit the thumb. I find it really hard to pick up casted on stitches in color work, although I think you can actually do it like a long tail cast on and just swap which, because you have two strands and you can just swap which yarns in which position. Sorry, now I'm rambling and I'm not really explaining anything clearly. I hope that you could follow all of that, and if you can't, I'm sorry. But yeah, so you're changing the size based on how many stitches are actually in the mitten, instead of just changing the needle size to make it bigger. Speaking of needle sizes, the gauge in this is 28 stitches over 4 inches, and the pattern suggests that you use a size 0 and 1.5 needle. The 0 would just be for the ribbing, and then the 1.5 would be for the rest of the mitten. And this is, in metric, that would be a size 2 and a size 2.5 millimeter. That's way too small, and I'm a loose knitter. So for tight knitters, I knit this on a 2.5. I could have gone up to a 3. I would knit this on like a 3 or a 4 to get the correct gauge. Just because, like, if you think about a traditional Shetland gauge, that's like 32 stitches over 4 inches. 32 stitches, and that's a finer yarn, because Rauma Finullgarn, which is what I used for this, is slightly thicker. It's more of a sport than a fingering or jumper weight. But like 32 stitches over 4 inches is a regular Shetland gauge, Fair Isle gauge, and I would use it to maybe a 1.5 or a 2 for that. Like most people would use a 2 or a 3 for that gauge, and that's tighter than this. So you need to really think, like, I would gauge swatch if you're planning to knit these, and you're not sure what gauge you're going to work them up at. I knew that to use a 2.5 because I used to knit a ton of mittens, tons and tons of fingering weight mittens when I was in grad school, before I started knitting a lot of sweaters. And I had my friend Monica and I would knit them together, and we had this whole system for like, what size needle do you use based on how many stitches are in the chart, because we would do a lot of chart editing, or we would like find a chart and or a pattern, and it would be like, use this size, and we'd be like, no way, that's not gonna fit, because we knew, because we knit a bunch, like if it said if there's 72 stitches in the chart, you use a size 1.5 needle, because it's fingering weight. If there's 60 stitches in the chart, sport weight, you use a size 3 needle. If there's 48 stitches in a chart, worsted, you probably use a size 4 needle. Like, we had a whole system of this, and so I knew there were 64 stitches at the like after you decrease these here, there's 64 stitches in the hand, and it's about a sport weight. So it didn't seem like I should use a 3 because that seemed a little like they might be a little too big, because 60 was their normal number, so I used a 2.5. I probably could have used a 3, it would have been fine. These are like a tiny bit. The thumbs are a little short. I should have gone up to a 3 for the thumbs, and that's sort of a normal thing. Like, if you're knitting sleeves, a lot of people on a sweater will go up a size to get their correct gauge, but they fit great. I like to wear them. Again, these are not like super tight mittens, like tightly knit mittens, because it's 28 stitches over 4 inches, but they are, so they're not good for like if it's 20 degrees and really windy. I live in the mid-Atlantic in Baltimore, so it's not usually that cold, but these are good for most days if it's like hovering around freezing. If it's really cold, I would wear worsted mittens. Yeah, so these are I knit this in Rauma Finull in a navy. I think you can tell this is navy, yeah, because it's going against that, and a gray. Normally I don't have the lights on in here, but it's pretty gloomy today. It's snowing. It's Super Bowl Sunday. I think I'm gonna post this on Tuesday, so you'll know. It was recently. Oh, my hair is wet because I had to take a shower. Sometimes I think that having wet hair is unprofessional, but my hair is curly, so you can't really do anything about that. Sometimes that's just the way it is. This is a navy and a gray, and I have my iPad so that I can check Ravelry, because I know the project's in there, and I can tell you what exact colors I used. I know you're here on my bookmarks. There we go. Oh, really? I can't believe it never remembers me on my iPad. I think it's because I forgot to check Remember Me. Okay, my notebook. Projects. Oh boy. Half Star Mittens. Okay. I used colors 459 is the navy. 403 is this heathered gray. So a light gray and a navy. And I was given these yarns by a very nice viewer named Pam, and I am really excited about it. There's a lot. She sent me a box of Rauma and some other yarns. Actually, because this is wool on wool, they stick here. They don't fall off. Looks nice. I just love the way these look together. I can't get over it. They're so fun. I do this so that then later when I'm like editing, I can screenshot it and I can have my YouTube, like the box, like the display box when people search or like see it as recommended, and I don't like, not me just going like, which sometimes happens. You get to choose from 3, but sometimes the 3 are not good, so you can upload your own. Yeah, okay, so I've talked about, this is a sport weight. It says to use here, CYCA number 2, Sport Baby Lofoten Wool Snikfit, SNY KVIT 2 ply, 100% pure Norwegian wool, 344 yards and 100 grams, which is that's pretty comparable to Rauma Finullgarn. Or you can use Rauma 2 ply Gammelzeri, which is the same yardage as Finullgarn. So Rauma Gammelzeri and Rauma Finullgarn are basically the same yarn, but Rauma Gammelzeri has a higher twist. So it's much better for like socks, because the more there's a twist in the yarn, the more strong your socks will be like when you're walking on them. So you definitely should be using Gammelzeri for socks and not Finullgarn. However, you can use Gammelzeri for mittens. Sometimes they come out really crisp if you use Gammelzeri, because the high twist just kind of like pulls everything together in a nice crisp way, but I do not think that these are not crisp. Look at that color work. I mean, like, the lines are very strong, and Finullgarn too. And Finullgarn tends to be softer on the skin. So if you are sensitive and you want to make mittens, hands are like not a particularly sensitive part of our bodies because we're putting stuff on them, although we use them. They're more weathered than other parts of our body on the whole, especially our palms. Like, there's less sensitivity, I think, in parts of the hands than there are in other parts of the body where wool might touch. Like I can wear this with, I'm just wearing a tank top under this, so there's nothing under, but a lot of people would find this too scratchy. Yeah, whereas Brooklyn Tweed Shelter, like I said, spun at the same mill, most people don't find that scratchy to wear next to their skin. Even though, because yeah, woolen spun, I don't know if there's a difference between actual softness in woolen spun and worsted spun. Like there's things about woolen spun, like it's warmer because the woolen spun fibers trap more air, and so that holds the heat in close to your body, whereas woolen spun yarns have better drape when you knit them up and stuff like that, although it depends on the gauge. But yeah, that's a thing. So what else do I want to talk about? Oh, I used less than 1 ball of each of these. My scale's over there and I'm not gonna get it. I just had to do my sourdough starter. I had to feed it, so the scale was over there in the kitchen. But I used about 23 grams of the navy, which is the foreground color. And I used just about 27 grams of, maybe a little bit more. I think I used 29 grams of the gray. So if you have 30 grams of each, you're probably, actually I would say that you'd want to have 35 just in case you're a little bit of a looser knitter. But you can definitely get a pair of men's or women's mittens out of a 50-gram ball of each color. That is not a problem. Anyone who tells you differently is just trying to sell you more yarn. But it's always good to have backups, so you could buy more yarn. And I recommend getting a kitchen scale just so you can measure how much you have left over, how much, and again, like if you want to make yarn, or you want to make projects with scrappy yarn, you know how much you have, and then you can measure how much you used. So I tend to measure at the beginning and end if I don't have a full ball of something, so that I know how much of that color was used. And I think that's all. I would totally recommend getting this book because there's so many beautiful things in it, and I will show you a few more of them. There's like some cowls, that's really pretty. It's just like a single loop cowl. It doesn't actually fold over. She's just kind of wearing it like that. It's a pretty scarf. A lot of the patterns, like the actual stitch patterns, are repurposed throughout. There's some like socks, they're cute. A lot of the stitch patterns are repurposed to kind of tie this in as a collection, which I think is really cool. There's little slippers. Those are kind of thicker socks, slippered-like socks. There's sweaters. Again, you saw that stitch pattern in that scarf. There it is in a sweater. I just think that's really cool. You can just see how much you can do with a cool book. Oh, I haven't made this one, but I made the forest star. That one's cool. The forest one's right here. I bookmarked that for Hannah. My roommate wanted to knit this, so I bookmarked it for her. I have made this a couple times. I made it on a size 3 needle with Gammel's-Arian is a little too big. Then I made it on a size 2 needle with Scout Camper. It's whatever the, no, Scout. Kelburn Woolen's Scout is the DK, and Kelburn Woolen's Camper is the fingering weight. I made it with Camper, the fingering weight, in these same colors actually. And it was too small, so one of the kids got it. Gave it to her in like October, and she was super excited because her sister got Selbu mittens last year that came out too small. And so if you've never watched my channel before, by kids I mean the kids that I used to nanny. I don't have kids, but I was a nanny last year, and from the 2020-2021 academic year, basically I was a live-in nanny in Washington DC, and that's how Tiny Desk Knitting got started, because sometimes they were all at school. Didn't happen a lot until like March and April. But when it did, I would record. I wanted something to do, and so I started this channel because I had the tiny desk that it was their Zoom school desk, but they weren't home. Their dad was like, "Oh, you should call that tiny desk knitting." So I did, and still called that, even though now I have dining room table knitting because that's where I sit now. But yeah, so the kids, the girls, both got the Selbu things. Their brother, who was very small, did not, because he didn't care. He did get a sweater, but he grew out of it almost immediately, so I made him another one, but I haven't given it to him yet. Sorry, I talk really fast sometimes. I try not to. This is the second piece I'm going to show you. This is, oh, that's where I sewed it together, so let's look at this side. I designed this using a book called Traditional Norwegian Knitting, Modern, no, I don't know, something, I'll link it. It's by Sheila McGregor, and it's a beautiful book on charts and knitting from Norway. And Scandinavian, traditional Scandinavian knitting, that's what it's called. She also wrote my favorite book in the world, which is The Complete Book of Traditional Fair Isle Knitting, because it has thousands of charts. Maybe not thousands, it definitely has hundreds of charts. So does traditional Scandinavian knitting. It has lots of charts. And this pattern is from the Faroe Islands. And if you look through these books enough and you spend a lot of time, it smells really good because I washed it with jasmine eucalyptus. If you spend a lot of time looking at pattern books that will tell you like where things came from, you start to recognize like types of motifs that come from certain places. But I don't know if I would have recognized that as Faroese. I think this is really cool. And again, because it just sort of lent itself to change colors every 3 rows, like I did. This is knit in 2-ply jumper weight from Jamieson and Smith. The background color is 81, and I cannot remember for the life of me what the foreground colors are. I know this light blue is 14, and this green the grassy green is FC11, but I did say in another video, so I will pull them. I will pull the names and let you know in the comments. I designed this. I'm gonna put it on. It's like a, by I designed this, I mean, I like basically just cast on, I don't know, somewhere in the vicinity of 100 stitches because it's front and back, and just started knitting with a pattern until it was long enough to wrap around my neck twice. That's how easy it is to design things. Well, without shaping. As long as you have Stitch Dictionary and you know the gauge you want, the needles you want, the pattern you want, and you can find a stitch pattern, go to town. I always just tell people, oh, I'm gonna sneeze. I always tell people that they should do that. Excuse me. It's just really satisfying. And this hasn't been released yet. I am thinking of putting it up on Ravelry. I haven't decided where this pattern's gonna go. If you're watching this and you like this pattern, it's called the Fairy Lights Cowl, or it will be called the Fairy Lights Cowl because this looks like twinkle lights. Send me an email to barnabyknits@gmail.com and I will send you the very bare bones pattern for it. It has instructions on how many stitches to cast on for either a wide one, like a Mobius twist cowl, or this long one. And it has a chart. So it won't include anything else, just a disclaimer. It's like a Microsoft Word document, but if you want to knit this as like, you know, someday when it goes on Ravelry, you'll be a test knitter. Just send an email with like Fairy Lights Cowl as the subject line or something like that to barnabyknits@gmail.com and I will send you the pattern. Again, it's not pretty. It will be someday. And if you're watching this like much later and the pattern is up, I'll just like write in the description box that the pattern's on Ravelry and I will have a link to it at some point. Like I'll edit this video with the link. Yeah, this is another thing. Okay, so I used 4.5 balls, just over 100 grams, about 112, between 112 and 115 grams of the background color, which is the charcoal, which is color 81. I do know that. So the background used 4.5 balls, just over 100 grams, which is a slightly annoying number because if you're using another yarn and it comes in 100-gram balls, you're gonna need more than one. Unless you want to make the shorter version, which has a Mobius twist and about 145 stitches, somewhere in the vicinity of that. But it probably uses less than 100 grams. I haven't tried that. But if you want to try it, go for it. And I use 6 colors, but you can use 1 color, you can use 100 colors, you could use 3 colors, you could do a big ombre fade, it doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want. Yeah. So that's fun. You can switch the background colors and do a foreground color that's the same. Honestly, there's so many things you can do. This I just thought was fun. I did about half of it like last year, sometime in like April when I cast it on. And then I just like completely didn't want to do it because it got really long and I didn't realize I could because I was using a 16-inch circular, like a sleeve. You can just kind of fold it back and forth like this. And eventually I figured out that I could do that. And then it went pretty fast. And I finished it last week. This was my Olympic cast. It wasn't a cast on, but it was an Olympic project because it reminded me of the colors of the Olympics and I wanted to finish it by the time the Olympics were over. And I did. And this has I did a Kitchener stitch closure here, and you can see that's the row I Kitchener stitch, which looks a little bit more messy, but it's smooth. It's not a 3-needle bind off. You can do 3-needle bind off. You could sew it together. I don't know. Do what you want. I mean, it involves a provisional cast on, and then you have to join the 2 ends, but you could like cast on regular and then somehow sew the 2 ends together. Doesn't matter. You get to do what you want to do. It's your knit. I'm always like, if people want to knit my patterns, I'm like, do what you want with it. Completely change the shape, completely change the style. It's your piece. Do what you want to do. Use my pattern as a jumping off point, make your own patterns and sell them. Go for it. I just like to be a spur to creativity if that is something that inspires others. But I love the negative space of the black and how it, or the charcoal and how it separates the diamonds in such a satisfying symmetrical way. I love it. So that's the Fairy Lights cowl and the half star mitts. Hang on, I'm gonna hold them up. Yay, more Fair Isle stuff. Yeah, cool. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions, send me an email or comment below. You can find me on Instagram as Barnaby Knits and Ravelry as eBarnaby93. But I always link my Ravelry project pages if they exist. So you can just like click those links too. And you'll find that's like me, eBarnaby93. And then you can just click like notebook if you want to see my other projects. Yeah, I think that's it. So thank you for watching. This has been Tiny Desk Knitting with Emma. Bye.